All right, students, welcome back to another Star Tutors live stream. I hope you guys are as always, doing well. I apologize for the delay here a second, but if you're watching the video after, no worries. Obviously, that just doesn't apply to you. If you are here for the live stream, please feel free to ask some questions. I'm going to try to keep this live stream pretty short and this video pretty short. And I have some more good news on that front. The document that you're seeing in the background of my screen is something that we created for our own students, but we're going to open this up so that everybody has access to this doc. It's the 5 most important topics to CRAM study before the SAT. And obviously, for those that are taking the SAT this coming Saturday, this very much applies to you. If you're taking it in the future and you're looking for topics or things that you can really knock out quickly, then of course I highly recommend that you check out this document, and we'll make it available in the comments section or in the description below this video as soon as we're done. So check out that link. It'll be a Google Doc link, and you guys will be you'll be all set. You'll be ready to go and have this to write on, take notes. You'll see a little notes section at the bottom that we always encourage students to take notes. There's some very helpful links as you guys go through this. But once again, if you are watching the live stream, feel free to give us a thumbs up or a hello in the chat just so we can address you. If you're watching the recorded video, welcome. And again, after the video, you guys should see this in the video description below. As soon as we're done writing it, students are done writing on the document, and we'll provide those linked notes as well from what we get through today. All right, so with all that being said, and without further ado, let's just talk briefly about the 5 most important things that you can do, 5 most important topics to CRAM study before the SAT this coming week. Now, on this document, you will see that there's probably a few more than just 5. I'm going to point out the 5 that we always recommend, but this document is extremely important. Even if it's beyond 5, there's probably 10 at most, and it's obviously extremely important that we continue to look through that. Guys, welcome everybody that's joining the chat. Thumbs up if you guys are here and ready to go. If you're taking the SAT, give us a thumbs up this weekend. Obviously, this document can be very helpful. So when we talk about CRAM studying, one of the things that I want you to focus on is the fact that the SAT reading test is not as easy to CRAM study for. So in terms of the 5 most important, when we write this out, the 5 most important topics actually don't really have anything to do with the reading section. But the reason we give this document to our students is because, you know, even if the 5 most important topics aren't there, we still want you to have resources for the reading section. So instead of starting with reading, we're actually going to move down to the writing language section to start. And remember that when every section is worth, you know, relatively the same amount, the breakdown is a little goofy, but relatively speaking, every section is worth 400 points. Now that gets a little, again, goofy with the math sections and the balance between those two. But for the most part, and for the true part, we can say that the writing and language test is 400 points. And we can also say that the much more difficult reading test is also 400 points. So for the same reasons I just mentioned why we don't have you study for the reading test, or why those aren't the 5 most important topics, is because those can really be found down here. Okay, and the most important, and this is true of the entire test, between now and the next time you take the exam, and particularly if you're taking it this weekend, reviewing all of your punctuation rules is absolutely essential to this test. That is number 1. That goes for everything. So there are let's say, to be conservative, let's say 8 out of 44 questions, right? 8 out of 44 questions on the writing and language section deal with punctuation. That's more than 20% of the test. If you memorize all of your punctuation rules, you go into every writing and language section with 20% of the writing and language test already completed, already accurate. And the beauty of this and the resources that we're trying to provide you guys is that we have all of this available to you on our StarU tutoring app. So if you haven't downloaded StarU before, please click the link either in the description below, or if you're in the live stream, I've pinned that to the top of the chat. But you'll see that here, that under StarU, if you're looking to practice your punctuation lessons, all you have to do is go to right? You click on the home screen. If you haven't downloaded, I highly recommend it. Lessons and practice problems. Then SAT, right at the top, you slide over to SAT instead of where it starts at ACT. Slide over to SAT. And from the SAT panel, right, the SAT topics, it's delayed here for a second. Let's see if we can get it back here. I don't know what's going on. Come on, there, whoops, I did it too fast. Sorry, guys. Right, you slide over to the SAT topics section and what we're looking for. You click SAT writing and language. and then you click punctuation, and every single topic or every single question that could be asked related to punctuation on the writing and language section can be found right here. Not only the description of all the things that can be found and what punctuation rules you need to know, but also the ability to complete practice problems that specifically relate to punctuation. So that's number one. That's the first thing that we got to knock out because punctuation is so prominent on the overall test. So this is number one. I should put a star next to it. That if you're not sure of your punctuation rules, you need to do everything in your power over the course of the next 4 or 5 days to make sure that you do. So that's number 1 of 5. Okay? And the reason that this one is so important is because if you're looking at punctuation, you can knock out so many questions on a relatively easy, right, on a relatively easy part of the test. Punctuation is not overwhelming. The English punctuation is not overwhelming on this section. And so again, you can sit down and answer 20% of the questions without having to do very much work. And that's huge. That is so critical as we move through this. Okay, number 2. Okay, number 2, between now and Saturday, number 2 is pronouns, right? Pronouns can also be found, but we find that a lot of students, pronouns in number 3 then is the next one down here. Let's even make apostrophes, right? These guys are kind of 2.0 and 2.1, right? These guys right here are combined 2. I know that I said 5, but these are combined 2. The more you know about pronouns, the more you know about apostrophes and confused words as it applies to the writing and language section, the better you're going to do. Because again, all 3 of those topics, even though we called it 2, all 3 of those topics are all rules-based questions. They never change. They don't change from one test to the next. And the more you know about these 3, right, if 8 out of 44 are punctuation, I'm going to say that 12 out of 44, which is now 30% of the test, is combined in those first 3 topics. So thumbs up, guys. 2 thumbs up in the chat, or thumbs up if you don't want to comment. Just thumbs up below the video if that makes sense. And again, we're going to make this entire document available to all of you, both the edited version where you see my writing on it, as well as the non-edited version. So check that out in the video description below if you're watching the recorded part of the video. For those that are watching the live stream, just hang tight. It'll be posted as soon as we're done. We'll give you the blank copy, and we'll also give you the copy that has my notes on it. So those are the first 2. And again, I don't want to make this video too long in terms of you guys being able to review these things. You have StarU. If you're having trouble logging into StarU for any reason, depending on where you are in the world, see if you can do it from the desktop laptop version, which is also posted in the live chat above. So if you look at the live chat and you click on the link to the desktop or laptop version, you should be able to open it there as well. But check that out. Again, StarU can find all these lesson chapters. Sahaj, does that make sense? If you're trying to log in from a phone, depending on the device and the country, it kind of depends on there's some permissions things that we have to get through. So if not, try it from the desktop or laptop version. That would be my recommendation. In addition to providing you guys with the resources like StarU, where you can actually review the content, we also have our Smart Bubble Sheet, which can be found on StarU, or our Advanced Score Reports, right, which allow you to identify which question types you're most frequently missing. So again, this document is going to be made up for all of you. I'd highly recommend clicking on that link and checking out the Advanced Score Reports. The Smart Bubble Sheet is really cool in that if you submit your answers to real SAT tests, the Smart Bubble Sheet will churn out the lesson chapters that you need to answer the most that you've missed most often. So if I come back here and I go to the Smart Bubble Sheet, or if I go to Lessons and Practice Problems, this suggested practice test at the top allows you to see, once I plug in my answers from any real SAT or ACT test, this will tell me which questions I'm most frequently missing. And now all of a sudden I go to the punctuation section and I don't have to overthink it. So again, the Smart Bubble Sheet can be really helpful. I will say that the Smart Bubble Sheet is $5. So that is one thing that we've included on here. But if you're interested, it's so much better than buying a book. It basically gives you all of the content of a book, right? Smart Bubble Sheet is so much better than buying a book, and I know that from my own experience tutoring with other companies. We've specifically created this because we think it is so much better than buying a book, so much better than a book. It is a book in itself that all the content is from our tutorials to begin with that are all written by current SAT tutors, but the Smart Bubble Sheet gives you the exact question types based on your real practice tests. Same thing with these advanced score reports based on real SAT practice tests, which question types you're most frequently missing, which can then be applied and reviewed in the StarU app, which is again free with the exception of the Smart Bubble Sheet. So those are the two most important writing and language. Again, the premise of what we're trying to get through today in this video is to say that Zach, that's awesome, by the way. We had a comment from Zach in the chat for anybody that's watching the recorded. Went from a 24 to a 34 on ACT reading, 27 to 33 on the composite ACT. Unbelievable. I'm so glad that you felt the channel was helpful, but ultimately it comes down to your hard work, and that goes for everybody. So Zach, again, thanks for the comment. It definitely makes us continue want to drive forward and do more of these videos. But yeah, again, thanks for the comment. It's awesome to hear, and again, 99% of that improvement came from your hard work and your ability to work through these strategies. So yeah, great job. Great job, man. All right, so moving on from the next 3 topics that you guys should be reviewing this week before the SAT. My iPad gets going here again. Right, the next 3 all have to do with the math section. As you work through the math section, what you're going to find is that a significant number of problems on every single SAT math test deals with one of these 3 topics. And in a lot of ways, they piggyback off of each other. Okay, so linear equations would be number 3. If we're sticking to that, that 5 rule, the 5 topics to review. Systems of equations, which are just essentially typically two linear equations when they're found on the SAT. And finally, number 5 is factoring. If you can, the reason that we're having you review these, and I realize that there are a lot of students that have that want to review other items, right, other than these 5 that we just listed out. But the combination of the 5/6 topics that we just mentioned make up such a statistical significant number of questions on the overall exam. I cannot begin to describe that enough. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? That if you go back and you plug in your answers to these advanced score reports on the math section or on writing and language, if you're worried about questions that aren't within these 5, yet you're missing one of these 5 questions on a regular basis, you don't need to worry about anything else other than these 5. We need to knock out these questions first and foremost because, as you know, this all applies to Algebra 1 or the very, very beginning of Algebra 2. So everybody should have and not only that, but it's covered so thoroughly in math classes in school. Punctuation, right? Punctuation and pronouns and subject-verb agreement, right? All apostrophes and confused words. That's stuff you learn back in middle school. And so if we know that, and we know that these topics are the easiest, we cannot put ourselves in a position where we're worried about other questions while missing these ones. These are the easiest points to make back up. If you look at your practice sections and you plug in your answers to these advanced score reports, and again, when this is posted in the video description for those that are watching after the live stream, you just have to open this document up and click on the link that says advanced score reports, and it will tell you where to go. If you plug your answers into that document and you realize you're missing one of these 5 topics, you have to make sure that you review those first and foremost the week before the test because they are so easy, right? They are so straightforward. If you're missing other questions, it's not nearly as significant as missing these 5 because these 5 never change, right? If you're looking for linear equations as a part of the notes that I'd recommend everybody take, if you're missing questions on linear equations, you need to go back and you need to review this week on all questions of the SAT, maybe if it's untimed even, right? Questions that begin with words that contain the words linear equations, of course, right? If you see any of these topics come up within a question, if you see equation of a line, these words, equation of a line, right? If you see graph of a line anywhere, graph of a line, right? Or if they actually give you a graph, they give a full graph / coordinate plane, right? With a line in the graph, with a line. If you see any of these topics and you recognize, right, that you're missing these questions, we cannot afford to worry about the other question types that might be far more difficult when there are such easy questions right in front of us. Okay, with a line, right? So if you see a coordinate plane that doesn't necessarily have this, we got to be thinking right off the bat, y equals mx plus b. And we should write that out, right? If you see this and your first thought is not y equals mx plus b, regardless of what the rest of the question says, we got to review that topic. Okay? We got to review that topic. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if this makes sense? And my recommendation between now and Saturday, if you're taking the test, whenever you're taking the test, but if you're cramming the week before the exam, I highly, highly recommend, right? I strongly, strongly recommend taking notes in the same capacity, that you're focused on these topics. We've provided a lot of our playlists as well, so for the real-time playlists, right? I highly recommend that you go check those out. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you guys know what you're looking for? So those are really the 5 topics we recommend to all of our students. Those are the 5 topics that we recommend that you study ad nauseum until you have every single one of those topics memorized. Again, I'll write them out just so that everybody has it in a more concise way. Right? These are 1 through 5, really. It's punctuation, number 1. Number 2, if we're looking at writing in language, so this is writing in language. Right? Number 2 is apostrophes and confused words, also found on StarU. All of these topics in these lesson chapters are written like this on StarU. Confused words, also writing in language. Number 3 is linear equations. Number 4, systems of equations. And number 5 is factoring. And again, I highly encourage you, because those are all rules-based, right? Because these are all rules-based topics, if you are missing any questions that relate to these, when you plug in these to the advanced score report or into the smart bubble sheet, you should not think about any other questions until you have these 5 down every time you sit down to take the exam. Okay, does that make sense? Can everybody give me a thumbs up? Those are the 5 that are the most important and the most important that you cover this week. As I mentioned, I'm gonna talk about reading here briefly, but it is the hardest section of the test. It is the hardest section of the test. And so these are the 5 topics that if you plug these into the score reports and you recognize, hey, I'm getting a lot of these questions wrong, this is where you need to start, because these never change. They never change. They're rules by definition. That's really what math comes down to. And if you can identify these types of questions on the test, your score can improve. Remember that every question, one question on the SAT test, is equal to 10 points, roughly speaking, right? It changes, it might vary, but on average, it's worth, one question is 10 points. And so if you recognize that you're missing 5 questions in this grouping, 5 questions out of this group here, right away, that's 50 points that you can earn back without ever having to worry about the hardest topic that everybody else always worries about. Right? That's 50 easy points between now and Saturday if you're missing any one of these topics. Or if you haven't reviewed any of these and you realize you're missing all of the questions that relate to these topics, all of a sudden that could be 100 points without ever having to think about the difficult questions on the test. Without ever having to think about the difficult questions on the test. Those are the 5. Those are the 5 most important. Let me jump back up here real quick to the reading section. And again, I don't want to make this video too long, because I want you guys to be able to take the document, take what we talk about in the video, and then apply it yourselves to the real thing. But when we talk about reading, again, simply put, we have to read more. And especially, and believe me, I applaud all international students. If you're taking the SAT in your non-native language, I applaud you to no end. That's unbelievable that you're able to do that. So unbelievable job in working through this. But having said that, it is a difficulty, right? If you have to take a test in your non-native language, you need to be reading in English as much as possible. Okay, that would be the #1 recommendation. And I realize, which is part of the reason we don't really think about this as cramming for the test this week, I realize that this isn't really a week before thing. This is just reading in general. So if this is your last opportunity to take the exam, the SAT is the next one, and you're trying to cram, I highly recommend over the next few days reading articles, as many as you can get your hands on from publications that look like this. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the BBC, all of those are going to produce content, are going to produce language, vocabulary that are really reflective of the SAT reading passages. So no, are they going to be perfectly in line with those? No. But are they going to be very close? Absolutely. And on top of that, if you do have more time than just this week, it can't be stressed enough that topics and articles covering these types of publications will ultimately help you in a major way if you continue to read more. Does that make sense? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if all of that makes sense? If all of that makes sense. Thumbs up, guys, if that stuff and you guys feel pretty comfortable with that. Beyond that, our YouTube channel has become pretty popular because of our real-time videos, right? Where I sit down. I've never seen these test forms before. Usually they're the most recently released tests, and I take these SAT reading sections in real time. I'm not perfect every time. I don't get every question right every time, but hopefully it gives you a sense as to the stress that even if you do this every day for 10 years, there is still a stress component, and it's all about pushing that stress down and focusing on what it is that you need to be doing at that moment. So the other thing that I would recommend that's not in the document here, but I'll post it in the chat, SAT real-time reading videos. Okay, we've created a playlist related to all of our SAT real-time reading videos where you see me take these tests in real time. Beyond just talking about reading more, what I would recommend doing is taking your reading test, taking reading test on your own, preferably one that's listed in that playlist I just posted. Taking reading test, let's just say this, taking your own reading test, right? Taking your own reading test, right? Grading it, right? That's step 1 here for reading. This can be something honestly that you do this week too, right? Plug in answers to the advanced score reports. To advanced score reports. Okay, and then with your own test in front of you, 3, watch real-time videos, real-time SAT reading videos with your own test in front of you. That would be the step-by-step process. And like I said, you won't have, there's 8 videos there, so I highly doubt any of you will be able to take all 8 practice sections, but maybe you've taken some of them already. So watch real-time SAT reading videos with your own test in front of you, right? Because if you do those things, guys, the reading section is so much about strategy and staying calm. So if you do those things, if you're able to see somebody else take the reading section in real time and understand the time constraints and the stress and all the things that go into the reading section, I promise you, you'll come out of that section, you'll come out of that practice feeling so much more encouraged. Okay? Guys, for everybody that's just jumping on, if you're trying to get to a 700 on the reading and writing and language section, start with your grammar rules. All right, we mentioned the grammar rules here. I talked about the 5 earlier in the video, I talked about the 5 most important things that you can cover between the writing and language and the math sections on topics. But I want to remind everybody that the beauty of our StarU tutoring app is it doesn't just cover these topics. If we go back here, okay, and we click on SAT at the top, right, again from the home screen, we're going to click on lessons and practice problems, then SAT at the top, right, on the scanner, on the scroll, then SAT writing and language. Every single one of these topics right here that you see when you open that writing and language section, those cover 90% of the grammar topics covered on the SAT writing and language test that you will see this Saturday if you're taking the test. So it's very critical that if you move on from those topics we discussed earlier in the video, if you can move on from these initial topics here, okay, and you are looking for more grammar review, start with the writing and language section. I cannot stress this enough that if you are not getting a 400 on writing and language consistently, or at least a 380, right, then get to that point before you worry about the reading section. Because writing and language, frankly, is much easier than the reading section. It's worth the same amount of points. And we have so many students that worry about the reading section. The reading section is already the most in your favor. The scale is the most in your favor on the reading section of all the sections on the SAT. So first of all, by sitting down, you have a better opportunity to get a better score on the reading section by doing nothing. Now, obviously, you're not going to do nothing, but the reading section is one where you can't prepare nearly as much as you can for the writing and language and the math sections. So before doing anything related to the reading or worrying about the reading section, I highly recommend, especially if you're taking the test this week, to get to 380 on the writing and language, because that knocks out 380 out of 400 points of the 800 point total on that section of the exam. Okay? Sahaj, one of the things I would recommend if you feel like you're struggling with score improvements and you feel like you're not able to get to the scores that you want, try taking an untimed test. Untimed, sit down and see if you can score 1400 if timing is not a factor. If you can't, then the good news is that's just about content review. And now you have to go plug in your answers to those advanced score reports or smart bubble sheet, right? And figure out which questions you need to review. If you can score 1400 with timing not being a factor, then it's probably a combination of both content review so that you can answer those questions more quickly and trying to suppress any nerves or anxiety related to the timing. And that just comes with practice over and over again. I really do believe that those real-time videos that I just posted, that are also posted in the document and in the links below this video, can be very helpful in trying to keep those nerves to a minimum. But once more, and kind of as a final point here, I cannot stress enough to everyone that's watching this video that the first thing that you need to do before reviewing or worrying about any other section is to make sure that you are answering all 4 of these section questions, that you are answering these right 100% of the time. Because these come up on every test, every single SAT, every SAT contains questions on these. And more importantly, a significant number of questions are contained within these 5 lesson chapters. Significant number. There are 154 total questions, 154 total questions on the SAT, right? If we subtract out the 52 questions for the reading test, right, that leaves us with a total of 102 questions between the exams. I would say that of the 102 questions, these topics right here cover 40 of those 102 questions, meaning that you can go in out of 1,200 points on the test, right, between the writing and language and the 2 math sections. Of those 1,200 points, you can go in with knowledge of 400 points, automatic, rules-based, right? You can go in with 400 points before you ever sit down because these topics never change. That's the definition of a rule. These 2 right up here, right, these first 2 are grammar rules that can easily be reviewed within StarU. Those are grammar, right? And these guys down here are just basic algebra, right? Algebra 1, beginning of Algebra 2. Okay? So Victoria, and anybody that has the same feeling of anxiety or nerves, first of all, can everybody give me a thumbs up if you have these written down? Like I said, we're going to post this document both with my notes and then blank as well, so you can take your own notes and the links and everything that I mentioned today. We're going to post this in the video description below for anybody that's watching after the live stream. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you have these 5 topics written down and if you are committed this week to staying focused on these topics before any others? If you're missing questions here, you're giving up free points. If you're missing questions on the advanced score report when you plug in your answers, if you're missing questions of any of these 5 topics, you're just giving away free points. And that's not what we want. These things can be very, very easily memorized without any anxiety and stress between now and the Saturday test. This is probably 2 hours total of work to review these 5 topics. And yet you end up going into the test earning 40 out of 102 questions on those 2 sections before you even sit down because they are rules-based. It is extremely important that we focus on those 5 first and foremost. And the beauty of all this is to, who was it that asked that? Victoria, I think? Yeah. Okay. The beauty of all this is, Victoria, if you don't need to be anxious if you have these. I mean, how great is it to know that going into a test, you have so many questions already answered for you? And that's the beauty of approaching it in this way. Okay, that's the beauty of approaching it in this way, is trying to identify the questions that you feel most comfortable with, which hopefully are these 5, and then you knock those questions out without any shadow of a doubt of whether or not you're going to get those questions right. You know it. And that level of confidence, that ability to move through those questions quickly and accurately, because you can do that with rules-based questions, will allow you all the time and confidence in the world that you need on all the other questions that you naturally worry about because you haven't seen them before, you don't feel as comfortable naturally with those. Okay, so that's why these questions, they're not only important as questions in themselves, right? They're not only important as questions individually, they're also important for every other question on the test because they'll give you the confidence you need to continue to push forward, which is such a major psychological battle that you don't just, get down about one difficult question because you know that there's 5 linear equation questions still yet to come, and that those 5 are all equal value to the one that you're struggling with. And that's the power of these 5 to cram before the test. Okay, guys, the last thing that I'll post here, is if you're struggling with the SAT reading section, here's another video about how to be the best SAT reader. So you guys can find that in the chat if you're struggling with SAT reading. Otherwise, again, I'm gonna end the live stream now, just so that we don't have too many questions. If you have any questions related to this video or related to any of our apps or anything like that, make sure that you comment below the video. We'll be posting this document along with the blank document in the video description below for you guys to use throughout the rest of your time preparing for the SAT. Okay, Victoria, I'm super glad that you're comfortable with those topics. I love it. Guys, please make sure, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up on the video if you liked the video. Please subscribe to the channel. If you're interested in looking at our membership program, which gives you some pretty cool upgrades like the Smart Bubble Sheet, all of that, please check that out on StarU as well. But otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope these 5 topics are in the bank when you get to the testing location on Saturday or whenever you take the exam. And again, please make sure that you cover these 5 topics before ever worrying about anything else the week before the SAT. All right? Again, help us spread the news. Please tell your friends if you have already subscribed to the channel. Subscribe yourself if you haven't already. And if you guys have any further questions that weren't answered during the live stream, please make sure that you comment those below, and one of our teachers or tutors will respond to those. Thanks so much, guys. Again, have a great rest of your day. Have a great week, and good luck to everybody taking the test on Saturday. One final thing here I should mention. Sorry, I know that I just said we were getting out of here. We do have a full comprehensive SAT review before every SAT exam. SAT comprehensive review. Okay, that live stream for the one that's upcoming can be found now in the chat. Please turn on all the notifications to get that live stream as well, but we'll be doing that on Thursday. We do those on Thursdays before every major SAT exam. Check out that video, set a reminder for yourself, help us spread the word, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your day, have a great week, and good luck on your next SAT exam.